would like to thank the following sponsors for their assistance in making these programs available. The Cooper Group, on behalf of Cooper Tools. The Skill Corporation. Ingersoll Rand Air Compressors. And DAP.
Most everyone appreciates the look and feel of natural wood furniture, especially if it shows the hand of traditional workmanship. To overcome the problems of high cost and finding a craftsperson with the skills to reproduce a piece of traditional furniture, many people are restoring and refinishing their old chairs and tables themselves.
The old-fashioned curling iron.
Yeah.
It's some fun stuff.
Nice stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this nice old chest of drawers.
Yeah. Nice detail work. I wonder what kind of wood that is. You want to look?
It's oak.
That's a plus. That would be worth stripping.
I think so, yeah.
I saw some chairs over there I really like too. I'm going to look at those.
You know, bringing out the inherent beauty and the living character of a nice old piece of furniture like this one can be a truly gratifying experience. I'm Kurt Burbick. Now, refinishing a piece of furniture may seem like a difficult job, but you know, there are materials on the market today which practically do all of the work for you. The tools are inexpensive, easy to handle, and by following some basic steps, anyone can do a professional-looking job.
For our first project, we're going to bring back the natural beauty of this old buffet, hidden under who knows how many coats of paint and old finish. It poses an interesting challenge, especially with all this fancy detailing. Now, before we begin our transformation, let's join Kurt to see some of the tools we're going to need today.
For stripping and refinishing the furniture, we're going to be working with tools that are pretty much standby in most households. A couple of old paintbrushes, a paint scraper, a couple of plastic buckets, a putty knife, some sandpaper, screwdrivers, a wood carver's chisel, a natural bristle brush for applying stain in the sealer, paper towels, tack cloth, canvas and plastic drop cloths, a shop vacuum, an old waste container like a cardboard box, an orbital sander. We'll also need a squeegee, a pair of durable stripping gloves, safety goggles, and
a toothbrush
with brass bristles. And we'll be showing you how to use this later in the show.
I can hardly wait. When working with chemical strippers anywhere, you want to be sure to protect your floors. Even concrete can stain. Under the drop cloth, we've covered the floor with a layer of plastic. We've elevated the feet slightly above the floor. This makes them easier to work on and keeps them clear of a lot of the mess. Okay, we've removed all the hardware, hinges, and door handles, and I'm dropping them into an old coffee can filled with stripper, which then I'm covering with a lid to reduce evaporation. Then we'll come back to these later. Now, once we've taken the mirror out of the frame, we're ready to start our stripping.
In the process of stripping, all chemical removers have vapors which can be harmful if inhaled. So set up in a place that's comfortable to work, that has good ventilation. We'll be working out here in the garage where we can open up the garage door. And we're also going to be using this fan to help with the air circulation. To make this job more manageable, we'll be stripping the doors, drawers, and mirror assembly separately. That'll give us more control, and we'll be able to elevate the individual pieces to a more comfortable working height. We've taken the mirror and the frame apart so that the stripper won't damage any of the silvering on the back of the mirror.
I'm pouring the stripper into this open container so I can more easily work with it. Then I want to be sure and put the cap back on the can. It doesn't evaporate. don't need anything fancy to apply the stripper. I'm using an old brush with natural bristles. The natural bristles don't have a tendency to melt away like some synthetic brushes can. I'm spreading the stripper on good and thick. You can never use too much. And you always want to spread your stripper in one direction, unless otherwise indicated on the can. And for safety, I'm wearing paint stripping gloves and a long sleeve shirt. I don't need to worry about wearing goggles when working with the semi-paste, but when we're working with the thinner, more liquid material, then I'll want to wear goggles to protect myself from splatter. I'm working from top to bottom, one section at a time. It's important not to let the surface dry out and work in small, manageable areas. After the stripper has begun to react with this half of the buffet, then I'll go on to the second half.
Most strippers today have a semi-paste or a liquid consistency. We're starting with a non-flammable semi-paste stripper that has a methylene chloride base. Methylene chloride is a premium agent in most paint and varnish removers. And after we've removed 95% of this paint using this semi-paste, we'll follow up with a thin, non-flammable liquid. For removing paint, the semi-paste is far superior to the liquid. It is thick enough to cling to the vertical and upside down surfaces, and it has a slower evaporation rate, which allows it time to penetrate the paint. This is a powerful solvent, but it will never discolor, raise the grain, or destroy the wood's natural patina. Patina is that soft, aged look of wood, created by the exposure of the wood's natural grain to the sun's ultraviolet rays. And no matter whose product you use, always read and follow the manufacturer's recommendations about application, safety, and storage. And regarding the disposal of the stripping residue, always allow the solvent to evaporate completely and dry thoroughly before getting rid of them. Well, Avian, how's it going?
Great. It's great. It's great.
This is one phase of the operation where patience is very important in the way it affects the ease and quality of the workmanship. Depending on the kind of stripper and the number of layers of paint you want to remove, it should take from 5 to 20 minutes before you're ready to start scraping. But with a little experimenting, you'll know how long you have to wait by just looking at the surface.
The stripper's been cooking for about 5 minutes. Look how it bubbles. It's coming off almost effortlessly. Now you always want to let the stripper do the work for you. After all, that's why you're using it.
The optimum temperature for working with stripper is between 60 and 75 degrees. Look at how it is softening and lifting the paint right off the wood.
Now there's no need to laboriously chisel it off. Any direct pressure can scrape or gouge the wood you're trying to preserve. Now take your time. Don't force it. That looks good.
I can tell by the pattern of this grain that it's white oak.
Yeah, it's going to be beautiful.
Part of the fun of refinishing furniture is discovering what kind of wood's been used. After a while, you get familiar with the patterns of the grain and how the tree's been milled. Stripping is a messy job, so we try to keep the work area clean by having a cardboard box around to consolidate the residue. Well, now that Avian's got 95% of the paint scraped off this top, we can move on to a liquid stripper. Here again, I'm using this old brush. It's important to keep the surface of the wood moist while you're working. Otherwise, this stripper tends to dry up. If you use the semi-paste one day to remove the paint and come back the next day with a liquid stripper, you'll find that the paint in the corners and the joints has had time to harden, and you will have that much more to do over again. Best to plan your time so you can finish stripping all the areas that you start.
Well, I've let this set up for a little while, and I'm going to take my steel wool and start...
Choose your weapon.
Aha, so this is where the toothbrush comes in.
And remember, this is a brass bristled brush, which is softer than steel. Brass is a softer metal and won't scratch the surface of the wood. This is a little trick Roger Albertson showed me.
Great, I'll try it.
Always keep the surface of the wood and the bristles wet with liquid stripper. Not only does it get into the corners, but the bristles don't get caught on the wood like steel wool. And you can work a lot faster and with greater ease and less expense. See how it works the paint out of the carvings. I like to keep 2 buckets of liquid stripper on hand, one that I use over and over again, and one that I save for a final rinse.
Kurt, I've been brushing the hardware with this brush. It's fantastic. Where'd you get it?
Well, you can get those at any hardware store or a grocery store in the pots and pans section.
Great.
Once you've broken up the remaining pieces of paint with the brass bristles, an old paintbrush makes a pretty good agitation tool.
I'm using a squeegee here to wipe away the excess liquid stripper.
Yeah, it's best to get a non-painted squeegee. That way the chemicals in the solvent won't strip its paint too.
When working with veneer, if you work quickly, you won't have any chance of the stripper seeping into the cracks and lifting away the veneer.
Now that all this paint is removed, I'm going over this frame with a final wash of liquid stripper. It acts as a final rinse and it'll remove all the film. See this? It's called paint haze, and it's caused by a little bit of paint in the solvent. Many times it's so transparent, especially on light woods, you never see it till you go to apply your final finish.
One good way to get into the cracks is to take a paper towel and wrap it around a putty knife like this.
And these paper towels do a great job of soaking up the stripper, and they're cheaper than rags. Here's a neat trick. This is a standard medical syringe with a 20-gauge needle, and we filled it with carpenter's glue. And this will help us get the glue underneath this piece of veneer. By pressing down, I can wipe up the excess glue that oozes out of this crack. Then put wax paper over it and weight it so the wood will be pressed together while the glue is drying. In checking for repair, look for any nicks, chips, gouges, or screw holes that should be filled before sanding. Here's one. Take a dab of wood dough and wipe it in the hole. What you want to look for in a patching compound is one that dries fairly quickly, can sand easily, and one that will absorb stain. The next step in refinishing is sanding. Stripping closes the grain of the wood, so if you want your stain and finish to penetrate the wood evenly, you'll first open up the grain by sanding. And if the wood has been stained, stripping may have caused uneven streaks in the wood. So sanding will help even out the discoloration and make the stain you're going to apply later uniform. A light sanding will erase any scratches or blemishes in the wood as well. For all-purpose refinishing, an orbital sander is the most popular power tool. There are a lot of orbital sanders on the market today that oscillate at 4,000 orbits per minute. But for good cutting action, you'll want one that oscillates at 8,400 orbits per minute. You will find that the more oscillations per minute, the less swirl marks and scratches appear in the wood. You don't have to press hard. Just keep equal pressure and use quick, even sweeps. Some veneers are paper thin, so be careful.
When selecting sandpapers are graded according to grits. Grits are the size particles coating the paper. The higher the number, the finer the particle. For furniture refinishing, you'll want to use 100 or 120 grit paper, and change your paper frequently. I'm using a rubber sanding block here, but I'd also like to keep different wooden shapes around for sanding curved and recessed moldings.
I'm done vacuuming up the sawdust from sanding, and now I'd like to talk about the next step. This is a part of furniture refinishing that people like the most, and for good reason. Up till now, everything we've done has been a kind of a cleanup process. Stripping off the old finish, cosmetic repairs, patching and sanding, all in preparation for the new stain and finish. Now it's a matter of the appearance you want. You may find the color of the bare wood attractive as it is, so that just means adding a coat of transparent finish. Or you may want to enrich the grain pattern or darken the overall tone of the wood with a stain. It's generally felt that certain woods, like mahogany, cherry, rosewood, and walnut, would lose their inherent beauty if stained. But then again, that's a matter of personal preference. Let's go to Avian, who will illustrate how we made our decisions.
One way to see what wood will look like with a clear finish is to rub a small section with mineral spirits. Mineral spirits will dry quickly, but won't raise the grain like water can. So you see what it'll look like without the stain. Now, in choosing our final stain for the buffet, we selected 3 shades we liked and sampled them on a piece of white oak.
Stain is a method of wood coloration. All I'm going to do is brush it on, letting the wood absorb it even and smooth into its pores, and then I'll wipe up the excess. You'll notice that I'm not using a rag to apply the stain. I prefer a brush because I can work the stain into the corners and grooves much easier. Here again, good ventilation is important, and so is good lighting, so you'll see every square inch of the raw wood you're trying to cover.
The longer you leave the stain on, the deeper the penetration and the darker the final color. For control, we don't want to leave the stain on any longer than 5 minutes. You can always add more to your satisfaction. Now, to make sure that you've wiped away all the excess stain, you can wipe across the grain with a clean cloth. And if there are no streaks, it's clean.
What we're going to do is put on a coat of sanding sealer and 1 coat of varnish. In the old days, shellac was used as the first finish coat. However, shellac is hard on brushes and it's hard to sand. Varnish is also tough sanding and it takes a long time to dry. Sanding sealer was invented to solve the problems of both shellac and varnish. It's a transparent sealer that's put on the wood to firm up the little fuzz and wood fibers that stick up after stripping and sanding. With sanding sealer, it's easier to sand the wood smoother than you can any other way. If you're using a polyurethane finish, sanding sealer isn't recommended because there won't be any adherence and the polyurethane will peel off. All right, we'll let this sealer dry overnight and then we'll do a little light sanding.
I've just completed a light sanding with 220 grit paper, and after vacuuming, I'm going over with this tack cloth to remove any dust that the vacuum might have missed. We want to make absolutely certain that the surface of the buffet is free from any particles before we apply our clear finish. The smoother the finish, the longer it will last. There'll be less friction when cleaning and fewer places for dirt to get caught. Feel that?
Nice.
Super smooth. Looks great.
There are numerous kinds of finishes on the market, from lacquers and varnishes to polyurethanes and penetrating oils. And they come in varying degrees of sheen, from high gloss and semi-gloss or satin to matte or dull finish. We're going to use a satin finish on our chairs and buffet. It's durable, waterproof, and good looking. Plus it has a slow drying time which will give us control over any buildup or lap marks that might cause problems with a quick drying finish.
application, it's best to try and work on a horizontal surface. Now I'm going into the bucket a lot rather than overloading my brush. And I'm not slapping it on either. Too much varnish or an aggressive application can stir up bubbles. I try and keep a smooth, steady stroke. When working around these carvings and into crevices, I want to apply a uniform coat with a minimum of runs. Then I go back over with a dry brush to smooth out the beaded areas and depressions. Doesn't that look magnificent?
I was just showing Avian where I found the date of the buffet. The name of the manufacturer is stamped here on the back of the mirror, 1905.
Isn't that neat? It's like uncovering an old relic from history and giving it new life.
Yeah, we really had quite an adventure as we worked, discovering what kind of wood the buffet was made with, seeing which stain brought out the grain the best, and then discovering the date on the back of the mirror.
And having shared the do-it-yourself refinishing process with you, as well as having learned a few new skills ourselves, we feel ready to tackle an even larger project.
I'm Kurt Burbick,
And I'm Avian Rogers.
and thanks for being with us.